Hello guys, welcome back. Nigel here, Nigel's Modelling Bench, and we're going to carry on now part 2 of this Airfix 1/72 scale Avro Lancaster Dambuster. So grab yourself a coffee, grab a beer, whatever, and sit back and hopefully enjoy. And if you are a beginner to the hobby, then hopefully you'll learn something. As I'll say at the start of every one of these videos, I call this a beginner series. It's not really correct terminology. It's for new modelers who just want to take their models that one step further. So if you want to get into airbrushing, if you want to get into a bit of weathering, if you're looking at, just building a model properly really, and sort of taking your time, and a few little tips and tricks to get around any issues you may come up against. We're also in this series going to be looking at reference material, because the Lancaster is a hive of information, but it's also, there's a lot of misinformation out there. So we'll also be looking at that, and I'll be showing you some of the stuff that I've got. But for now, we're going to carry on with the build. Now, as I said in part 1, if you look in the instructions, here where you've got these symbols, it's telling you to drill, obviously. This black triangle is telling you the last stage. Okay, and these numbers in circles, they are the part numbers that we're going to be using. So A5, B5, B4, and we've got to that stage there. We've done steps 1, 2 and 3, and there we are. There's the assembly there. If you haven't seen part 1, go back and have a look. So as you can see in here, we've got these symbols, these numbers: 33, 33, 33, 33, 78. 78 is interior green, 33 is matte black. 78 here on the floor, 78 there inside. So basically all the internals are going to be green to a point, but we'll get into that later. That's where our reference material comes in. So what we're going to do now, we're going to carry on, and it's telling us to build up the pilot seat, add the pilot seat to the pedestal the pilot sits on, and then we're going to add the pilot, which I'm not going to do, and then add the control column, and then add all this to the floor. So basically, that is the way Airfix want you to do this. I'm not going to do it that way. Because when you put it together, when you put all this into the fuselage, your seat, as you can see here, your seat will be sticking out above the cockpit, as will the control column, and it's going to be easily broken off when you come to sand seams and everything. So it's easy, because the Lancaster has such an open cockpit when you look in from the top. Hopefully you can see on the next stage. I'm looking for a picture of the car. Just notice this paper's all different colours. I'm looking for a picture of it from the front. Isn't that amazing? There isn't one here. That's incredible. There is no picture of the cockpit open. It's all underneath. There we go. You can see there. It's all very, very open. So it's easy to drop the control column and the seat in afterwards before we fit the canopy. So we're gonna make up the seat, but we're not going to glue it to the pedestal, and we're not going to add the control column. We're just going to glue the pedestal to the floor. So first things first, we need to get those parts off. So we've got C20 and D28, and D26 is the pedestal. Okay, so we have our parts off now and all nicely cleaned up. It's worth going around the edge of everything, because you've got these mould seam lines like I showed you on the edge of here and everything. So just go around and just gently, just once or twice with a stick, just a gentle little rub just to get rid of the mould seam lines. Same all around the seat, all around the armour plate on the headrest, and then the same all around the base. So when it comes to assembly, you can see here it's telling us we need to add the seat upper to the lower. So we have the seat lower, and as you can see in here, there is a recess. On the bottom of the seat, there is a tab. Okay, you see the tab. So they are going to go together like that. Okay, the actual seat back sits on top of the seat. It doesn't go like this, it goes like that. So that's how it should look when it's together. Okay, and then all you need to do, this is why this extra thin is so fantastic as a cement, you just touch that on there, and that's it, it's glued. Now that it's glued, you can manipulate it and get it to the position you want it, and if you want to, you can fit it onto the floor and just eye it up so that it looks right. Now it needs to go back a touch, There you go. Basically what you want is this armour plate here to be perpendicular when it's stood on the ground. So if it's actually just sat on the base, let's put it on here and show you again. If it's just sat on here like so, you want the armour, oh, come on, stay in there please. You want the armour plate to be, you won't have to do all this on your model, I'm just doing this so I can show you. You could just hold yours down on the table and do it. But you want the armour plate to be perpendicular, that's 90 degrees to the floor. Okay, so when you look at it, you want to see it like that. Alright? And then once you've got it all positioned, you might want to put another drop of cement on there, just to make sure. There we go, that's that all done. What you can do is just put it down on the table if you just want to have a check, and just check that backrest. You'll be able to pull it about after it's dry anyway, because it is after all this very, very soft Airfix plastic, which they don't use anymore, which is a blessing because it's not the best, but it is what it is, and it is what we've got. So there we are. So there's our seat, and our headrest is nice and vertical, so that can go to one side. Just leave that there to dry. And then it's telling us to add the control column, which obviously we're not going to do. We can get it off and clean it up. Where is it? Here it is here. We can see we have C22. So we'll cut it off of the sprue, just like so. As you can see, the plastic is very soft, so it sort of it just all gels itself back together. Now the bottom, I'm just going to look carefully at the drawing, and we can see that on the bottom there is supposed to be a small tab. So be very careful here how much sprue you cut off. So I'm just going to leave that a little bit on there, because I want to see, okay, we've got a great big hole for it to go into. Yeah, unfortunately the part is nothing like the drawing. You can see the drawing is showing, it's this wide section here with a great big tab, the tab on the bottom, and then you've got these two sections either side, and then when it goes in it sits on the floor like that. But in reality it's nothing like that. You can see it's not wide at all on the bottom, there is no tab, and it's just a great big hole in the floor. So I would suggest is leave a bit of the sprue nib on like I have there. Just leave a little bit of that on there, and then it'll give you something to press it in with. And then when it comes to fitting it, after everything's together, we can just put it in with a drop of super glue or something. I would stay away from using poly cement on that, because it's a massive hole and a tiny pin, and it'll just end up just becoming a mess, a jelly mess. So I'm just going around now with my sanding stick and removing the sprue nib from there. There we go. Just remove the mould seam from the sides of here. Things like removing mould seams is your #1 step to taking your models to the next level, because it's things like that when you start to do washes and stuff and weathering, when you've got mould seams everywhere, the weathering, the oils and stuff you use will pick up. Because the whole idea with weathering and enhancing your models with using oils and stuff and washes, they basically pick up on edges. So, you know, like on these Bombay doors, there's no detail at all. If you look on the inside of these flaps, you have all these ridges and ribs, and if you put oil in there, it makes it all just pop. So it makes it all stand out and look a lot more defined. And that's what, you know, gives you the really nice look of the model. And obviously if you leave these mould seams everywhere, the oils will pick up on that as well. So that's cleaned up, okay, and then we can just get inside there, just remove that in there. And one little tip I will give you here, you need to be very, very careful, okay. Take your tammy extra thin, rub most of the glue off so the brush is barely wet, and then go around. You don't need to go over it too much, but just brush over it as if you're painting it. There we go, and that will remove any little mould seams around there, and it just makes it look a lot better. Okay, so we can put that there because we're not going to use that there. We've got it off and cleaned up. Another little thing you can do, a little tip for modelers. Where's my pencil gone? Okay, found it. Right, another little tip. What you can do is, as you take parts off the sprue, you can cross them off, so you know if you've got one line through there, you've got it off the sprue. Like with this one here, C22, the control column, I've got that off the sprue, so I'll put a line through it, but I haven't fitted it yet. These, I'll put a line through those, but I've actually used them, so I'll put a cross. So one line is an indication that it's been taken off the sprue. Okay, 2 lines, they've been taken off the sprue and used. Alright, and it's good if you're sort of, when you get to the latter stages of the build and they're telling you to put things like pitot tubes on or whatever, and you haven't put them on, it's good to go back and see what you haven't got. The other thing is bits like that, if you're going to leave them off, you could actually just put a little red dot on there, get a red pen and just make a red dot so it sticks out. But things like seat and control column, you're not going to miss out on those. Okay, so moving on now, what it's telling us to do is add the floor to the main cockpit. So as I've already explained, I'm not going to add the seat, so that's just going to sit on there like that. Remember, we've already done these ejector pin marks and everything. Make sure you've done those before you add this on. Okay, and what you can see there, that's not an ejector pin mark I've left behind. That is actually the shadow of the glue, the super glue I've used to fill the ejector pin mark. So we can put that floor in place like so. Come along with our extra thin, put a drop in there, put a drop in there, and that's that glued in place. That simple. If you want to, we can put a drop in the other side, just to make sure. There we go. So that's that done. Right. So moving along, it's now asking us to do the instrument panel and the rudder pedals. So C19, is this sprue C? This is sprue D, D30. So the instrument panel, there it is there. You can see it's very nice. We've got some raised detail on and everything for the levers. So there's our instrument panel, and then C19. This is what's nice about modern Airfix kits, is they put it all on the same sprue. So all the interior parts will be on the same sprue. And it's a disadvantage with Revell. Some of the older Revell kits, they don't actually have a sprue number, so they don't have like C22, C19. It'll just have 22 and 19. And 22 could be here, and 19 could be on any other sprue in the box. Awful, very, very difficult for finding parts. So again, I'm going to cut these sprue nibs off fairly close to the surface. And then just come in with a sanding stick. And you can see on here again, on the side of that part, you can see there is a mould seam. There's a line going down it, and that's the mould seam. And we want to remove that as well as the sprue nib, so we can just gently, notice I'm going one way only, I'm not just going like this. Just gently remove the mould seams and the sprue nib at the same time. There we go. Then we can come over and do the other side, exactly the same. We've got a mould seam on there and the sprue nib. Job done. And then go across the bottom, remove the mould seams. Across the top, not that it matters, no one's ever going to see it. And there we have our rudder pedals. And if you really want to be fussy, you're not ever going to really see them, but you can come in and remove the mould seams from the insides of all your pedals. Just like so. And there you are. Just like that. Now your instrument panel, again you can see we've got a great big mould seam running down there, so we're going to get rid of that. If you want to, you can use your pencil, just come in and draw the pencil over there, and then you'll see as soon as you start sanding, you can see now that mold seam there because it's highlighted by the pencil. Just keep sanding until the mold seam disappears, and as soon as the mold seam's gone, just stop. You don't need to carry on anymore. Okay, and then the same on this side. Not that this side really matters because you're not going to see it. And then over the top, oops, over the top, we're just going to remove that sprue nib, and we've got a big ejector pin mark on the back here. Now we're not going to see that, so we won't really worry about it too much, but you know, it's good practice. It's, you know, if you're gonna mess an ejector pin mark up, mess this one up because you're not going to see it. It's good practice to get you into the habit of removing them. So we can just come along with our round blade, just scrape away until it's all but gone, and then using the corner of the sanding stick we can just sand away and get rid of it, just like so. And the only way you're ever going to see that is if you look up through the blister, up past the turret. You're just not going to see it, so don't worry about it. And then on the bottom, as per the instructions, we've got this big square lump, which means it's going to go into the floor there. I fitted the floor backwards. What an idiot. I've done a monkey. I've done a plastic monkey. I put the floor in backwards. This is the trouble when you're making videos and you're trying to concentrate on what you're saying. You end up losing concentration on what you're actually doing. Right. It just shows I've been making models for 54 years now. You can always make mistakes, so don't worry about it. Okay, so that's going to go in like that. Now, we may choose to add this now because all of this here is going to be green. Even though the instructions say it's going to be black, all of this is going to be green, but this is going to be black. So we may wish to leave that and fit it afterwards. Okay? But I want to put it there for now, and I'll show you why. It's because we're going to do something now which is called scratch building. Now, I want to do this because this is something you're going to be really satisfied about. If you're new to the hobby and you do this, you're going to be really satisfied about this. When you actually look at the cockpit of a Lancaster, let me find one of my books here. Okay, believe it or not, I cannot find a photograph of what I'm trying to show you. But basically, this pedestal, let me use my pencil as a pointer, this pedestal here should have a panel in the side with matte pockets and stuff. Some of them didn't have it, had a crisscross effect, but 99% of them had a panel there. And then it had matte pockets and stuff. Now, as I say, I can't find a photograph. What I can show you is the 32nd scale kit I'm working on. So when you look in here, you can see this is the cockpit of the 32nd. You can see how big it is. When I hold it in my hand, you can see it's much bigger than what we've got here. But if you look down in there, you can see down inside there is a panel on the side here. You can see the pedestal here, which we've done. And then underneath here, you've got the panel on the side. And there's matte pockets and stuff in there. So what we're going to do, we're going to make that panel. And for doing that, we're going to use something called plastic card. Now, let me get that one put away, and then I'll come back and we'll talk about plastic card. Okay, so plastic card. This is plastic card, okay? It's known as styrene sheet. If you want to start getting into this, it's well worth doing, but you need to make sure you get the right stuff. There's lots of stuff out there these days, lots of sheet that isn't suitable. If you look on Amazon, you'll see lots of sheet and it's called styrene sheet, and then they say it's ABS. Don't buy ABS. Your normal glues won't work with it very well, and it's a lot harder. What you need is genuine styrene sheet, and I would always recommend looking for two names. One is Plastruct. You can see it has the orange label. Okay, Plastruct has a P for the symbol, and the other one, they're both American, is Evergreen. Okay, now these two names here, Plastruct and Evergreen, they are very good, very good products, very good quality, and they're the correct styrene that you need. They're not ABS. There's also a French manufacturer that's come online, and their plastic is very, very strange. I will show you quickly here. This stuff is just called a maquette, and it's a very, very strange material. If I could just get it out of the bag. If I can just show you here, this is what to look out for. Okay, well, it's not what to look out for, this is what the problem is with it. You can see here with this styrene strip, I can score it, and then I can snap it off, and I get a clean break. With this stuff, I can score it, and it doesn't snap, it's like jelly. Okay, and you can see it is not at all a clean break. So there are many different manufacturers out there churning this stuff out. As I say, in my experience, anything other than these two aren't that good. I also bought some styrene sheet once which didn't have a name on it, and it was very shiny. In fact, I can show you it. So I can show you what to look out for. You can see that this stuff is very shiny, and it doesn't stick as well as this. This is evergreen. Okay, so if you go for evergreen or Plastruct, you can't go wrong. Or if you're buying it for a reputable model shop, just make sure that it is actually styrene sheet you're buying and it's not ABS. Okay, you basically get it in all sorts of different sizes, but generally A4, A3, A2, whatever. So this is 1mm thick. I've got a piece here which I prepared earlier. Oh, by the way, you can also get it in all sorts of different sizes. You can see here 2 by 2.5mm. Because it's American, it's done in thousandths. It's done in inches, imperial. So it's 80 by 100 thou. You'll get 80 by 80. You'll get 60 by 80. You know, it's basically 40 thou is 1mm. So 80 is 2mm. 100 is 2.5. It's easy to remember. You can get the hexagons, you can get half round, triangular, all sorts of U sections, L sections, Z sections. You can get stairs. Just have a look online. It's absolutely a massive catalogue of it. So what we're going to do here is a simple piece of styrene sheet, and we're going to make the panel that's going to go in there. Now, you don't need to do this, but I'm just going to show you how I go about it so that if you want to do it, you can. And it's just a simple little addition, and you can say to people, look what I did in my cockpit. So the first thing you need is a cutting mat, and what you can see here, this light green which needs changing because it's all dirty, this is cardboard, so I don't want to go cutting on top of that. So I've got a little cutting mat here. This is a little A5 cutting mat I got on Amazon. It's just a couple of pounds, absolutely worth having. And now we need a rule, so I'm just going to use this simple rule here. Okay, and what I'm going to do is measure in here, and we can see that that is 5mm thick, and it's about 20mm long. So what I'm going to do is use my rule, and I'm going to make a mark there at 5mm, and I'm going to make a mark there at 5mm, and then take my rule and just gently score that like that, and then we can snap it off. And this is the beauty of having this genuine styrene sheet. It's not like this stuff that I just showed you. Okay, so that's the beauty of it. Now there's an edge on here. You can feel when you cut anything with a knife, you end up ploughing up the edges. It's almost like when a plough goes through a field, it pulls up on either side. So we can remove that by scraping, like so, or we can actually cut it off like so. But as you're new to the hobby, you're probably going to be better off scraping it. But it's good to get rid of it because it will interfere with your assembly. Okay, so now we've got that strip cut, and we should find that will fit in there. Yeah, it fits on that end, so I've obviously cut it on a very, very slight angle. So I'm just going to clean up the edge. There we go, that's going in there like so. Okay, so in fact that is a little bit too tight still, it's just lifting the floor, so I'm going to sand a little bit more off. I'll keep the camera going because it's good for you to see all of it. Now at the end, I want the end square, so what I'm going to do is use my rule, or I can use my cutting mat, and I can line this up on there like so. In fact, I'm going to get it so I can cut something off. Line it up on there so I've got it across, it's correct, and then I can put my rule parallel with this line, the vertical line on the mat there, and then just chop it off like so, and then using my cutters I can just hold it like a pair of pliers and just snap it off. There we have a nice clean square edge. That will go in there like that. Okay, and now we need to work on the front. Now what I'm going to do now, I'm going to take some more off of here because it's still a bit tight going in there. I'm not really happy with it. I want it to be a nice loose fit. Okay, so with the front we've got this instrument panel, and as you can see it's going to go in on an angle, so we've got to actually match that angle. So what we're going to do is put that there like that. Okay, and what I'm going to do is move it backwards. So if that's where it's going to go, this back end is going to be level with this corner here. But I'm not going to fit it, I'm going to push it back a little bit. And then I'm going to take a pencil and just draw a line so that it's going to be about right. Okay? And then I can take my rule, take my knife, put it on that line, a couple of scores, snap it off. I'm not gluing this instrument panel in purely because everything is green and the instrument panel is black. Now I can slide that in there. Push that down, check the angle, and the angle is actually okay. That's good enough for what we need. So now what I can do is measure on there how much it's sticking out, and I can see that it is roughly 2 millimeters. So what we do then is we come along on the top here, hold that on there like there, and then cut a line parallel to what we already have. Again, use our snips. I'm not cutting, I'm using them as a pair of pliers just to hold it. Snap that off. Quick clean up with the sanding stick. Right, and then we can slot this in. Just like so, and then we put our instrument panel in. Presto, we've got a nice joint. Okay, so that's that. If you want to, then you can cut little bits of plastic card and make up those mat pockets that go on there. It's entirely up to you. But as you can see, it's just, you're just adding a little something to your model. You're personalising it. You're making it yours. Okay, so there we go. Right, I'm going to get that glued in. In fact, we may as well glue it in now. What I'm going to do is just make sure it's nudged up properly. Put the panel in the right way. Nice, that's it. Make sure it's nudged up properly, just like so. And then we're going to add a little drop of cement at the back, just like that, and then remove the instrument panel. And then we can put some cement in there. Give that a quick push down. Job done. Okay, so there we are. That's your little scratch building lesson for today. Alright, so if you would now want to go that little bit further and just make everything look a little bit more, you know, you could do some more scratch building with your plastic card. This is These are actually 3 small rectangles. See them on there? 3 small rectangles of plastic card. I think that one's about 2 by 2, that one's about 2 by 1, and that one's about 1 by 1, 1.5, whatever. It doesn't really matter. All you're doing is just adding a little something more for the washers to pick up on, for your eye to pick up on, or whatever. So all we can do here is just put some extra thin on there, and then we can literally pick this up with a knife, put it in place, just like so. Okay, so there's one there. And if you want to, just to make sure, you can put another dab of extra thin on it, and then we can put some more extra thin here, and we'll put, in fact we'll put this one here, just next to it like so. Don't worry, I'll show you a close-up in a minute. Just have it next to it, make sure it's square-ish. Again, it's not, it doesn't have to be perfect. And that one can go there. And that is just adding, a little touch of detail. And when you look inside, it's just something else that the washes and the dry brushing will pick up on. Okay, there's a lot of stuff missing from around this area here. There should be all the trim wheels and everything, and the undercarriage and all that undercarriage control. But, it's not there. It's 1/72 scale. It's tiny, so it's absolutely fine as it is. Okay, so there you are. You can see what I've done there. Just added those bits in. Let me get the lever back better again. There we go. You can see there, those bits are on there. Alright, and that's it. Right. Rudder pedals. Let's get rid of this cutting mat. Rudder pedals going onto the back of the control column. So they're just going to sit, as you can see, they go this way round, so the legs are to the left, and that's just going to sit on there like that. So what we can do, because it's not an area that's going to be seen, we can put a drop of extra thin on first, just place that in position there, and then once it's tacked we can put some on afterwards, and just hold that in position like so. So that's our rudder pedals on, and again, like I showed you earlier on, extra thin, dry the brush off, and then brush it around those rudder pedals, and it will get rid of any little sanding marks or any edges and stuff. It just makes it all look a lot cleaner. Okay, we'll just do a quick check fit, because we put those pedals on, and we can see that everything fits absolutely fine. There we go. Right, moving on. Alright, so moving along, you can see here they're telling us to remove the port fuselage half from the sprue. We've got some holes to drill, we've got some windows to fit, we've got to cut some bits off. They're asking us to cut a hole here. Lots and lots of work going on here, and then we're going to fit our interior. So just one bit of advice. This is from a Chinese takeaway. This is a curry pot. This is what large curry sauce comes in. Very, very handy for putting all your small parts in. So just keep all your small parts in one little pot. They also come with a lid. So you can keep that over there, keep it away from the dust. It keeps them all together. It saves them getting lost or damaged or whatever. So that's a good thing. So you can see in here, they're telling us to drill 2 1mm holes. And we can see that they're there and there. Okay. Now, if you remember, I showed you these things before in the last video. Don't buy them, they are awful. These are the drills to buy. These are the microbox. You can get them in a lot of places. I know that Premium Hobbies sell them. If you get them from there, I know you're getting a genuine article. Be very, very careful what you're buying. In the UK, they should be about £10–12. If you see something a lot cheaper or in a different box, then there's something wrong. If they're £2 or £3, don't touch them. They're absolutely awful. These microbox in capital letters in the light blue or the grey plastic, they're fine. And then here, this is called the David Union 150. The spring chuck. It's a pin vise, basically, is what it's called. The beauty of this, you can get these type here, and these you'll get from your model shop or suppliers or whatever, and they will have collets. The disadvantage with these is you have to keep changing the collet. So you've got a collet in that end with 2 different sizes, and then you remove the handle and you've got a collet in that end with 2 different sizes. So if you're drilling, you know, if I'm pilot drilling a 0.5 hole and then going up to 1 mil, I've got to change the collet every time. It's really annoying. Whereas with this, as you can see on here, it will hold drills from 0.3 to 5 millimeters. So you can see it's got a massive capacity. Okay, so that's the beauty of this. So it doesn't mean you have to keep changing collets. So a thoroughly recommended tool. Again, get these from Premium Hobbies. I think they're about £21. I think they may even be about 16. I can't remember. They're absolute well worth having. So, and you can see with these drills, they just cut so much nicer. I know that my 1 mil is actually a little bit blunt, so this is going to take a little bit longer to go through than I want. In fact, it's not going to go through. There we go. That's how good planning goes for you. So what we'll do is we'll get the 0.9. I need to buy some more 0.1, some 1 mil drills, I guess. We'll get the 0.9 in there, and then that'll just go straight through. There you go. And it's much neater than using those other things. They're horrible. And what I'm going to do, rather than have to get all this out again, I'm going to grab the other fuselage half, because I know it's going to tell me to drill the 2 holes in that, because these are for the upkeep bomb cradles. So I'm going to drill these out as well, and it'll save us having to get the drill out again. There we go. So as you can see, when we go over the page, it's going to tell us, there you go, drill them out 1 millimeter. You can see there. So that's why I've done that now. And then I'm going to take that drill out, put that back in the box, get the 1 mil and open them out. Obviously my 1 mil has seen better days. I need to replace it. So now I can go in from this side, and that should remove any horrible nasty edges, burrs or whatever. Okay, so we should get a nice clean hole. We'll do the same on here. There we go, that's that done. Right, and then what we can do if we want to, looks like my 0.9 drill fell out. There we go, close that up, put all that out of the way. And then what we can do then, if you want to, you can get a larger drill. This is a 2 millimeter, and just very gently just touch the surface, and that will remove any burrs on the edges. You're not pushing, you're literally just touching the surface. As you can see on this one here, we've got there's like a rough edge on the hole. We just literally just touch it, and there we go, it's gone. It's got nice clean holes now. Do the same on the inside if you want to. It's just good practice when you're modelling. Any edges, any little burrs, anything like that, just get rid of them. They're not welcome. Okay, so that's that. And the other thing is, we've got these bomb door hinges down here, and obviously this being a Dambuster, it doesn't have any bomb doors, so we're just going to nip those off as it's telling us to do. Okay, there's some at the very ends as well, so we've got to get in and get those off. You can use your knife or whatever, and then with a sanding stick we can just come along and sand all that away. And then you can feel it, you can feel a nice straight edge along there. And that's that, job done. Okay, there we are. Right, you'll also see here, step 85, sorry, see step 85, page 17. So they're asking you to cut a slot here. That circle there would be a clear lens. That's where the camera goes. I'm surprised Airfix haven't given us a clear lens to go in there. But that's where the camera goes. So on a normal B1, they would be taking pictures as they're dropping their bombs, so that when they get back to the UK, they can show their squadron or whatever, they can see that the targets they've hit. But obviously the Dambusters didn't have a camera, they had a light. But if you see in here it says C-Step 85, they're fitting the camera. Sorry, the light. Okay, so the light there, they've got the correct angle on it because most people have them going down. It actually looks directly across. So that light is in there, and that was the light they used to get their altitude correct while they're over the lake. This is where it's coming into reference. I'm going to do a bit on reference, as I've said, but this is not the time for it. So we've decided we're going to do AJT. Okay, AJT is ED 825. Okay, so we've got on the instructions, we've got the option of doing ED 825, which is here, AJT. Okay, now ED 825 was actually taken to Scampton on the day that actually on the 16th of May. Now she was taken there, and here she is here. You can see she doesn't have AJT or anything on her, she's just bare. Okay, there she is there. You can see the ED 825 here. The G, the suffix G, means it has to be guarded while on the ground. Okay, so once they got to Scampton, that was removed. But the ED 825G, so everywhere they were else in the country, wherever they went, they had to be guarded on the ground because they were obviously very secret. So you can see her here, flaps down. You can see the black flap internals. You can see here they've got the G aerial on there. Okay, we're going to talk more about G in a minute. And you can see here we've got the drift sight is there. We've got the cable coming out of the side. Note, we've got light green interior here. We're going to talk more about that. Note, the turret is not black inside. Okay, this is a fantastic reference book if you want to build a Dambuster Lancaster. There's 3 books in this series. These are the Wing Leader Photo Archives. This is number 18. I think it's 5. Is it 21 and 18, I think. But these are the specials. It's not 21, it might be 12. But have a look on their website, which is there, wingleader.co.uk. And these books, 1995. You know, when you consider you can pay £7 for a magazine these days, these things are amazing. So this book covers the specials, as in the Dambusters, the Grand Slam, and the B.II with the radial engines. So you can see on there. Okay, what they cover. And in here, they are real proper wartime photographs. So you can see there's AJC. And then it's giving you all the different options and everything, and it talks about the rear spotlight, which we're going to get into as well. But yeah, it's a very, very, very good book for reference. You can see the bomb there, you can see this whip aerial there, and you can see the camera. There it is there. There's the camera. C in the belly of the aircraft, looking over there, looking to starboard, and it's telling us where it goes. Now the instructions are telling us to fit that camera. It does say in here somewhere, it tells you, here we go, arriving at Scampton on 16th of May 1943, ED-825 became spare aircraft AJT, and after a last-minute substitution, the Lancaster attacked the Sorpa Dam with Joe McCarthy's crew aboard. The aircraft was lost in December 43 on an SOE resupply flight. It does say in here, I can't see it now, I'm going to have to find it so I can show you or you won't believe me. Okay, so here we go. This book, unfortunately, I've got it in a brown cover so you can't see which book it is, but this is actually, it's called Dambuster Lancaster, and it's by Peter Forkashevitz and Mark Postlethwaite. Now Mark Postlethwaite is the main man behind Wing Leader, and Potter is a fantastic CAD modeler. So you can see here he's got his models in here, and it goes. This book has a good description about all the aircraft that were used, not only that actually flew on the mission but developed as well. And ED-825G here, as you can see, I've got Johnny Johnson there, who was the last Dambuster to survive. He died late last year, wasn't it? Sorry, not late last year, late 2022. This is 24 now. So we can see here, I don't know if you want to read that, but basically I'll put that there, and then you can freeze frame and you can have a read of it. That's talking about ED825, which is what we're actually building here. Basically, she was used for flight trials, not for testing weapons. She was used for testing the airframe on how it would react. It says in here they used to have the back of the bomb bay covered in plywood, and it actually got ripped off in these tests, so then they changed it to aluminium or alclad. With the flight trials completed, it was decided that ED825 should be delivered to Scampton as a matter of urgency to act as a spare aircraft for 617 Squadron, as they had lost a couple of airframes to damage during training. She arrived at Scampton on the afternoon of 16th of May and was immediately prepared for the coming night's mission. The only things that were not fitted in time were the spotlights, which required extensive calibration and testing. Of course, ED825 did end up going to Germany that night in the hands of Joe McCarthy and his crew, whose own aircraft ED925 went US as they prepared for takeoff. They successfully dropped their upkeep on the Sorpa Dam and picked up a bit of flak damage on the way over. So basically, ED825 actually was a successful. It managed to drop its bomb, and it was there, but it didn't have spotlights. So we're not going to fit that light, and that's going to, if this model ever goes into a show or anything, well, you could do the same. It'd be, why have we got the spotlights on there? And you can tell them. AJT didn't have spotlights, so there you go. Right, so we're not going to make that hole, but what we are going to do is cross off that part there because we've used it, and we're going to cross off these parts here because we've used them. And now we've got to look at getting these windows fitted, but before we do that we need to start thinking about paint, don't we? Because we don't want to be putting these windows in and then having grey plastic behind them. So this is all going to be interior green, and as I showed you in that photograph just now, the instructions here, they're telling you to paint all this matte black. If you look in the book here, you will see there are many images, CAD drawings of the insides of the aircraft. Oh, come on, where are they? And you can see in here everything is black. Okay, the seat is green. They have no armour plate on that seat. I think they did actually have armour plate. The bomb, by the way, was either red oxide or some crews painted their bomb black. Now where Airfix have got their green with yellow and red stripes on, I do not know. When you look at pictures in here, you can see that all of the navigators area, let's get this bloody light out of the way, the navigators area and the wireless operators area is all green. Okay, note that, that's the G, the G set, okay. Airfix are telling us to remove that. And when we look at the nose area, you can see here it's all painted black, and that is not correct. As you've just seen in that photograph, and we can see the pilot doesn't have armour on the headrest, but he does there. So that's something we'll have to look at. I'm sure they did have the armour for the Dams raid. I mean, the armour folded down anyway. But there we go. So the one thing I always say, okay, when it comes to, we're not going to talk about reference material now on the whole, but the one thing I always say, don't ever trust paintings, drawings, whatever, unless they're blueprints and you know them to be original, because that is basically an artist's impression of what there is. Okay, there's no mention in here of stirrups. The actual because normally the bomb aimer in a Dambuster, in a normal B1, the bomb aimer became the nose turret gunner, and then when they had to go and aim bombs, he came down and aimed bombs, and then the rest of the time he was a nose turret gunner. But on the Dambusters raid, because they had to have the bomb aimer here to drop the bomb, and they had to have the nose gunner in there to shoot the dams, the defence in the dams, then they had both. So apparently the turret had stirrups, otherwise the legs of the gunner would have been kicking the bomb aimer. And also another one is the chutes that the bullets came down from were generally open, but they say that these had bags. I can't find any evidence of it whatsoever. So again, that's something else we can talk about when we look at reference. But for now, all our interior is going to be green, okay, and none of it's going to be black. And also when it comes to the front turret, that's all going to be green as well. You can see here they're telling us to paint this part of the floor black. That's not correct. It should be green. Okay, here they're telling us to fit the bomb sight. That's not correct. They didn't have bomb sights in them. All of this is correct, being interior green. So what we're going to do, rather than stop here now and paint all this, what we're going to do is get all of this done. What are we doing for time? Get all of this done, and we're going to get all of this area here done. And then what we can do is get our green paint out once and paint everything. And then that's it, job done. Now on the back here, they all of the Dambuster's aircraft had this position here, which is where the gun went in the belly, down in this hole here. They didn't have the gun. They found it was useless, but they didn't have a blanking panel in there. They had the gun. Now unfortunately, what Airfix should have done is made this as a clear panel, because I think I've got a border model ones here on 1/32 scale. Yes, I have. It should be a clear panel, because you can see on this one here, that's what it's like. Okay, you can see here, this line here, and that's where the gun came through. So you can see that is like looking on that. So we should have a clear panel behind it. So we'll see if we can make something. Maybe we'll even use this. But we need to make a clear panel to go in there, because otherwise it's just going to be an open hole, and it should be a clear panel. So basically we're going to build up to here, up to step 21, without fitting everything into the fuselage. And that way we only get our paints out once. So we're not going to fit the clear parts yet. Not going to do that. We're not doing this. We're not going to fit that into there. We're not going to fit the bomb sight. We're not doing much, are we? So now we need to build up the navigator's table and the bulkhead between him and the wireless operator. Right, so here's all the parts for the navigator and the wireless operator, all off the sprue. Just a couple of notes. You can see here I've got what's called a sanding sponge. Okay, you can't really buy these anymore, but you can get the Megamo ones. Okay, and they're sort of softish, and they're good for doing these circular areas. But unfortunately, these are no longer available. Have a look on the UMP website. They may do something like that, but I'm not sure. But it's basically a skinny sponge, and as you can see, it deforms, so it's good for doing round parts. But also on the back of the navigator seat here, you can see we've got a dirty grey ejector pin mark on there. So come in there with your sander and just sand away, because, oh, throwing it on the floor now. Yeah, because basically the back of this seat is, like you can see, it's like a blimmin' armchair. And that was basically like a tin seat or aluminium seat. So we can sand away the back of there until that ejector pin mark disappears, and not worry about thinning out any plastic or anything. So you can just keep sanding like that and get that thinned out and make it look a lot better when we look in the window, because you will see it a little bit. And we can also sand away the bit on the sides. All we're doing is reducing the thickness a bit and making the seat look a bit more like 72nd scale instead of like a fully quilted leather armchair. There we go. That's that. Right. Well, I think we'll call that a day there with that one. Right. The other thing is, on the table, sometimes this happens. It's unavoidable. You can see we have a sprue nib here. Okay, and it's on the edge. Get this light back over. You can see it's in the edge, and it should look like this here, but it's actually causing us an issue. So if you take your radius blade and you run your blade up against the edge of there, so it's nice and square, and then just roll the blade over, and then do the same this way. Make sure you've got a very sharp blade. If you have to push it, then you're likely to slip and cut your finger. that's all I'm doing, is just rolling the blade over and then coming in from the other side. And as you can see, you can clean that out of there like it was never there. Alright, so that's a little tip for you for any model you're doing, not just this one. And then if you want to, you get the edge of your sanding stick and just go in there and just quickly sand it. We've got ejector pin marks on the bottom of the table there. They're raised to the bottom of the table, we're not going to see them. So this panel here, D14, is going to glue down into there, like so. That's a bit of a strange fit, but hey ho. So that's going to go in there like that. And then this is going to go on the side. So I'm not quite sure how I'm going to hold this and cement it in place at the same time. I think what I'm going to have to do is put a drop of cement in here. That should be enough to hold it. And then we get our rule and use our rule as a square to make sure it's all nice and square, like so. And then we can put some cement down the back of it, because the back of it isn't going to be seen really. You've got a tiny window in the side of the fuselage here, but you're not really going to see anything through there. There is a decal to go on there, so we'll put that on after it's all painted. So that's that done, and then this upright pillar here with the seat on, that's going to go into there like that. So what I'm going to do here is just very gently sand the end of these. You've got these two raised areas, and they're going to go into there like that. Okay, so what I'm going to do is put some extra thin into there. The trouble with extra thin is it dries so fast. So that should be enough just to hold it in place. And I can put some extra thin in there. We'll put another drop in there. And as you can see, I do all this before any painting, and there's a reason for that. It's because if this was all painted now, we'd be making a mess of our paintwork, and the joints wouldn't be as strong either if there's paint there. So it's good to build in sub-assemblies as much as you can. We need to make sure that pillar is nice and vertical. Now it does actually have a hole that it's going to go into in the floor. Yeah, so what they're telling us to do, we're going to put the cockpit in first, put this in first, and then this is going to go inside and that pillar is going to drop into that hole. So what we can do is just quickly dry fit. Dry fitting is, you can't do too much dry fitting in model building. It's there is no location for it. It's just, as you can see here, it's just going to go in. Oh, it's got this this leg on the end as well, which we're going to fit now. Now they're telling us this box here is the H2S radio, and they're telling us to cut it off. As you can see here, they're telling us to cut it off. That's not strictly correct, because these aircraft, the Dambusters, had G. Now the G radio wasn't that shape. The G radio was just a straight rectangle. So you might want to remake something out of a piece of plastic strip, something like that. Or whatever. What I'm going to do, I'm not going to cut that off. I am going to cut it off, but I'm not going to cut it right off. I'm going to leave that pillar on there. Okay, so I'm going to cut this off here, and I'm leaving that pillar in place. In fact, I'm just going to take the top off of that, because it had a raised bit on it. And I'm going to get a piece of plastic stock, or what we can do is just file this down so it's a rectangular shape, because it doesn't have that shape. It's just a simple rectangle. And then we can drill a hole in it and mount it, because that is actually going to go on the end of the table here. So we'll put a couple of drops of cement in there. And this is going to go up underneath the table like so. Okay. And you'll see me putting more glue on. It's because this isn't, we call it glue. It's actually not glue. It's actually it's a chemical reaction. It's melting. Got my tweezers here. It's actually melting the plastic and it's welding it together. So that's why you see me putting more on there, is to get a good weld action going. Now this is going to sit, there's 2 holes in there for that to sit in. And there's 1 hole for that back leg to go in. But as you can see, it's quite a squeeze. Come on. It's making it awkward because it's all soft and floppy. As we know, when it's soft and floppy, it's hard to get it in, isn't it? So there we go. So that's, I'm going to get that table vertical, and then I'm going to move this leg over a bit. Soft and floppy leg over, eh? Right, so that there is vertical, the table's horizontal, our pillar is vertical, as you can see there. So that's all good to go. So what we're going to do, we're going to leave that like that and let it dry. And then I'm going to do something with this and make it into a suitable thing for a G radio. Alright, so pushing forward, you can see I've got some parts off the sprue. We've also got the starboard fuselage off now. We've got an ejector pin mark here in the engineer's panel, which I'm going to fill because there's a decal going on there and it won't look very nice if it's got a great big ejector pin in the middle of it. So we're going to fill that with some super glue. But before we do that, I want to look at another couple of things. If you notice, when I take my fuselage halves off the sprue, I remove the sprue nibs, but I'm not sanding them down. The reason for that is if I sand them down now, then we put the fuselage halves together, we've got to sand that joint again anyway. So we may as well do it all at the same time. Okay, so I'm just leaving a little witness on there, but what I will do is just get my sanding stick and just make sure that there are no raised lumps and bumps on the inner surface. Okay. Just make sure that's all nice and smooth. Obviously we can't do it all on here at the moment because we've got the interior in the way, but again we can do it on here and just make sure we don't remove the pins unless they're in the way. But yeah, just sand the surfaces. So what we're going to do now is telling us here we need to put this clear part in, so I'm going to make sure I've got the fuselage sanded there. This clear part here is H22 and these are the identification lights going underneath. Now I'm putting these in now because they're going to be painted silver, so that when you look up underneath all you'll see is a bright silver light. But I'm putting these in now because what we'll do is paint them silver and then we'll paint over everything in green. Back here doesn't really matter because you're not going to see any of it anyway. But there's also, somebody's put a myth out there that Tamiya Extra Thin fogs clear parts. Okay, it doesn't. Alright, I'll show you now. I've put that in like a normal part and I'm going to put the Extra Thin at either end and just let that capillary under, and then I'm not going to touch it. Alright, a lot of people say you have to use PVA to glue in clear parts or whatever because that will make it fog. It's actually super glue that fogs clear parts. If you glue a canopy on with super glue and there's no air around, you will find it will fog. Okay, I think you can get no fog super glue now, I'm not sure. But basically you don't want to be using super glue on clear parts because it will make them fog, even if it's just next to it. But I use Tamiya Extra Thin on clear parts with no issue whatsoever. I never use canopy glue or anything. I always use Extra Thin to glue my clear parts on. So don't listen to the myths that are out there. I get asked that question a lot. Obviously somebody's put it out there that Extra Thin causes clear parts to fog. It doesn't. In fact, I'll show you something here. Get the Extra Thin, I'm going to brush it onto there. Alright, in fact I'm going to brush it onto here as well because we're not going to be using that panel. Okay, you can see that it has removed the shininess on it because it's obviously attacking the surface, but it hasn't fogged. Alright, so don't listen to what people tell you. There's lots of story. The internet's a great thing, but it's also a bad thing because it allows a lot of misinformation to get out there. Right, the other thing I've done, this little radio, this was the piece, what radio is it? It's a piece of gear. This is the piece we cut off here, and as you can see, it's got the, remember it had the steps in it. All I've done is sanded it so it's now a rectangle rather than two rectangles, okay? And then in the bottom, where you got that raised bit where I cut it off from that, remember I cut it off from there? Where we've got that raised bit, I've drilled a hole in there, that's 0.85. And what we're going to do is just put a drop of cement into the bottom of here. Okay, so we'll get some cement in there, and then I'm going to drop this onto that pedestal, the one we cut off earlier. Just like so. And then turn it so it's in roughly the right position. Just like that. So that the navigator can see it. Make sure it's all square and level. And there we go, and that is correct for a Dambuster Lancaster. It had the G, it didn't have the H2S on top. Now what Airfix have done here is they've moulded it with only the H2S on top. They haven't put the G underneath. So there you go, that's how it should look. Okay, whoopsie daisy, it shouldn't fall out on the bench like that. But in a way I'm glad that has fallen out, because now we can take this out of here. And we can, I'm conscious of time guys, because this is like well over the hour now. I'm going to make sure our surfaces are nice and smooth. Make sure there's no raised bits on there. As you can see, I've got the sprue nibs still on here. Okay, what I want to do, the reason I want to get these apart was because I want to glue this part in here. Now there is a lug on this side, not on the other side, so you want to glue this into this side. Now this panel goes in like so, and it's going to go up against that lug to keep it square. So what I'm going to do is put a drop of extra thin in there and let it capillary around. Okay, it's not quite square, is it? And then I want to put these fuselage halves together temporarily, and I want to make sure that that not only sits central but also is up against the other fuselage half. Now it needs to come around a bit. That lug is not holding it dead true. It needs to come around. It needs to be just off of that lug. It needs to face directly backwards. And that was basically an emergency escape hatch, and also the position where the H2S went. You had the big bulge underneath. You can see it here in the clear part. There's that big bulge, and that would go on over the top of that. So there we go. So we got that. We're going to have to make up something in there to go in, because we need a clear panel in there. It's not just a hole. Okay, so there we are. I just wanted to make sure that's going to fit in there like that. And then the other thing we're going to do is just put in the engineer's seat. Now you don't get the option to have this folded. In fact, I'm not going to fit it right away because I'm going to do that ejector pin mark. But that's just going to drop in like that. And you don't have the option of having it folded up, unfortunately. You just have it down. But we're going to have to live with that. So there's our navigator, wireless table and radios and everything. There's our cockpit all done. We've got our fuselage halves ready. We've got our clear part in there. We've got our gun mount in there. No gun. They didn't have a gun when they actually did the mission. So if you're going to do this as ED825G without the AJT on the side, or with a gun, you need to make sure you don't put the AJT on it, because AJT would have been added at Scampton. The G would have been removed. I'm probably going to leave the G on mine. It was actually painted over. So it would be ED825 with no G. It would have AJT on it, no gun, no cameras. If you want to do it with the gun and you want to be accurate, then you must do no AJT and leave 825G. Okay, so there we are. We might even do that because it's a bit different, isn't it? We shall see. But as I say, we'll be talking about reference material and everything in another video. So the other thing to do is, just before we go, you've got a couple of raised ejector pin marks there. Well, they're not raised, they've got raised edges. Make sure they're cleared off because they'll affect how the bomb bay fits. We're just going to check how that fits in there. That goes in there, lovely. There's lovely, see? There we are. So that's all good. Everything's hunky-dory. And you can see that when we look down in there, we can see our mat pockets that we made earlier. Alright, and we can just quickly check. We can get the instrument panel and just quickly check that's going to fit okay. As you can see, that's all absolutely fine. And then once it's all painted, we'll get our decals on and everything, and then we can close the fuselage halves up. I had noticed this blanking panel for the upper turret. Obviously Dambuster had the upper turret removed, so you've got this circular disc in here, and I've just had a look at how it fits. It goes in with the, you've got a long leg and a short leg. You can see this leg here is shorter. It goes, the short one goes at the back, and when it goes in, it's sat, oh dear, it's actually, when it goes in, it's actually sat quite sub flush. It's low down. I'm going to close the fuselage halves up. You will see here that basically it's got quite a big step in it. Now you may be thinking that's okay because there was a panel that went in there. The panel that went over the hole wasn't actually that shape. The panel was more sort of like this, and then it was flat on the sides, and then it was covered in dope linen, and yeah, some of them were a right mess. So it's not actually a circular hole. So the kits that have a circular hole there are actually incorrect. So what we're going to do, we're going to completely fill this and get rid of the seam completely, and then just sort of give it a different colour paint. So what I want to do to make it actually sit higher up, I'm going to sand away this leg here. Now I haven't tried this off camera obviously because I've only got one of these parts. I can't do it on a spare part that I don't have. So hopefully this is going to work. What I'm trying to do is get it to sit higher up, so it comes more up through the fuselage. That's better by the look of it. Now I've got some of my plastic card here. I'm just wondering if I can wedge it in there. Let's just see how this goes. I'll do this live on camera for you so you don't get confused. I just wonder if I can wedge that in there. Hold it up. It doesn't want to stay there. I'm just seeing if I can glue that in there perhaps then. Perhaps glue that in there like so. And then the same on the back. This is actually 0.75 thick plastic card. This is what I used for the little mat pockets on the sides. So that will wedge in there now. Now it needs some material taken off the back here now, so I'm going to thin this down a bit to make it fit. And this is great stuff like this because for beginners, because this is showing you, when you get a kit that doesn't just fall together. This is kind of showing you how to make it work. There we go. And now when we put this fuselage half on, now we can see the back is sitting much lower down because the back is not on the plastic card, because I've glued it too far back. So we're going to move that plastic card forward, push that in there again. And as you can see, it still needs more off. So I should have used a thinner piece of plastic card. But this doesn't, precision here is not an issue because all we're doing is just making a plug to fill a hole, and then when we come to sand the fuselage down, it will all get sanded down. And you can see now that fuselage doesn't want to go together. So what I'm going to do now is remove... Guys, the battery went flat, so all I've done is sand a little bit more off. While the battery was charging, I've gone on and filled that. I've got about 2 minutes, I think. So we're just going to get that in there, and we're just going to glue that in. Okay, get plenty of cement on it, get it nice and solid. And we could, well, we won't bother putting it around the top yet, we'll do that afterwards. But that's glued in nice and solid, and then we can put the fuselage halves together. Just check. It's all going to be good. We can see we've got that paneler now, and it's sort of flush with the fuselage surface, and it'll be easy to sand and fill now. So there we go. Right, that's it. I will see you soon for part 3. Sorry this has gone on so long, but I think we've covered quite a bit, and I've got a few bits and pieces explained, which is good for those that are interested. Thank you for watching. I'll see you all soon. Bye for now.